All right, I would like to talk about how to understand your wife. But since I couldn't possibly have any idea how to do that, we're going to talk about communication. Turn to Genesis chapter 1, would you? Genesis chapter 1. Communication is absolutely crucial in a marriage that honors the Lord. There was a young lady, she was engaged, and her grandma had been married for, I think, 50-some years. And so she asked her grandma, she said, "Grandma, what's the secret of the success of your marriage?" And her grandma replied, "Well, when we were first married, I made a list of 10 things that for the sake of our marriage I would overlook in your grandfather." What do you think, that was the last question? No. So she, well, what was on the list? And her grandma said, "Well, lucky for him, I never got around to actually making that list out on paper. But," she said, "every time your granddad did something that made me hopping mad, I would just say, lucky for him, it's one of the things on that list." That was a lady that was talking to herself. That was a lady that was communicating with herself about her marriage. And that's where we've got to begin. It's not talking to your wife or hearing from your wife. It's talking to yourself about what the Bible says and what should be done. We'd like to talk about good communication. It's absolutely crucial in a good marriage. So what does good communication look like? More specifically, what does good communication sound like? Where do you begin? Well, let's look at 3 lessons this morning that will help us on our way to good communication in marriage. And I know 3 lessons sounds suspiciously tidy. I sometimes am, suspicious of something so neat and tidy. But there are a lot of other things, obviously. But these really are things that will give us a good start to communicating in a way that will honor the Lord and help your marriage. Number 1, recognize the differences. Recognize the differences. Differences in what? Between you and your wife. You will never communicate the way you otherwise would until you take the time to move things from the back of your head, subconscious, some things you may know, to right up front where they're going to help you, where it's a heads up sight display where you can see. Learn to recognize the differences between you and your wife. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. And last year in the seminar I was privileged to give, we actually landed on this largely. Genesis 1:27 says, So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And the Bible goes on. Look at Genesis chapter 5, and you find this somewhat repeated. Genesis chapter 5, and look at verses 1 and 2. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them. And he blessed them and called their name, Adam, in the day when they were created. So, 2 kinds of differences specifically. One is there's a difference between men and women. Newsflash! Okay, honestly, as simple and as dumb as that sounds, few things are being more profoundly and viciously attacked than that one thing right now. It's almost as if there is no absurdity anymore. And humor is dying because humor is truth exaggerated. It is, or another form is absurdity. And there's nothing that's absurd anymore. I was watching a situational comedy from 1964 last week, and the whole premise, and it was very funny, but the whole premise was based on universal creation differences in men and women. They're not only rejected, you are considered a bigot if you so much as notice them. So you've got to man up and be willing to know what it is you know. I've never seen a day where we live in a world where the emperor's new clothes. Remember the old fables make more and more sense to me now the older I get. I mean, they were written by savvy people, kind of like cartoons with an agenda. You think they're for kids, but they're not, right? So here's an emperor, he's got no clothes on. And the people that were bilking him out his money said, "Oh, you look marvelous." And some little kid said, "Hey, the emperor has no clothes," right? Kids are born knowing things that we have to educate ourselves out of right now. So there are differences. And you've got to be able to know the differences if you're going to communicate accurately. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and you're saying the right things, but the way you're using the words and the way they're hearing the words, or vice versa, is all off? You can be never so eloquent, and it's not going to matter, because if you don't have the same language, you're dead in the water, right? Years ago, I was driving to a church I was going to be preaching at in Virginia. And in those days, we didn't have GPS, obviously. We didn't have it on our phone or anywhere else. And so I would call a pastor, and I'd get these long, in fact, when I was with your dad, Pastor Barker, we would have done this, long list of directions, and turn left at the oak tree, and then you're going to go a mile and an eighth or somewhere, and then you're going to turn right at the Exxon gas station. There are like 15 Exxon gas stations. And so it was an adventure every week. And in my first years, every church I went to, it was my first time. So I was looking for Miltree Highway. Presumably a mill tree is one that you would chop up to make grist for the mill, or so, I don't know. I was looking for Miltree Highway. I didn't find it, got lost, finally found the church. And the reason I didn't find the church is because what the pastor had told me was Military Highway. But he was from Virginia, and so it sounded like Military Highway. So I was looking for military. It was military. Another time, Sina and I, my wife and I, were holding meetings in New Jersey, and boy, was that ever an adventure. We stayed in like 2 or 3 different places in 1 week in an 8-day crusade. And we were staying with a lady. She was very kind. She wasn't even a member of the church. She wasn't Baptist. I'm not sure what she was. Nice lady. But one day at breakfast, we were all talking, and she was talking about Merlin. And I envisioned, a guy with a pointy hat and a magic wand or something. That's about all I know about him. And she'd been to Merlin, and she loved Merlin, and there was water in Merlin, and they got on vacation in Merlin. And I started thinking, man, I've been all over the place. I've never been to Merlin, I don't think. We got to go there. Wow, I'm going to go there on vacation. And then she talked about Baltimore Merlin. And I said, "Oh, you mean Maryland?" She said, "That's why I said Merlin." So years ago, my dad was preaching in Mexico, and he wanted to say, it's very cold in here. That's what he wanted to say, and which is frio, right? Frio is not the same as frijoles. Frio is cold. Frijoles is beans. Frijoles is cold beans, one would assume. So Dad wanted to say, it's very cold in here, and what he ended up saying was, it's much beans in here, right? So if you don't know the language of the person you're talking to, then the results are not always comical. They can be heartbreaking. They can be mind-numbingly frustrating. You want to pull your hair out. And this is with the wife of your youth, the woman you know better than anyone else in the world. Yes. But the woman you know better than anyone else in the world. Wonderfully, she is not you. She is not like you. In some ways, she's not anywhere remotely like you. Now, some of you, I just talked to a brother that's been married, I don't mean to embarrass you, but did you say 49 years? How often do you hear that? That's marvelous. And that you'd be here, I think, is a testament to, the people that need help on the home rarely end up in a venue where they get help for the home. And that's why they need help for the home. It's kind of an irony, right? So 50 years. And so you meet a couple that's been married for 50 years or 25, as I've been, and they think alike. They can finish each other's sentences. They think very much alike. And we know that phenomena. But even with that, let me tell you something. At the end of the day, she's a girl, and you're not. And there are profound differences. And by the way, God's creation goes all the way down to the micron. I'm making the word up. I'm not a scientist, but all the way down to God made this world to work the way it works. It's not as if you've got religion and church, and so you've got theology, then you've got science and sociology and astronomy. Let me tell you something. God made the whole shooting match. Right. And he made it to work together. I mean, the whole thing works together. Like a symphony, and I'm not just saying this. And so the moment you reject God as creator, you are utterly confused as to his creation. So you've got to know there are differences between men and women. These are created differences. Now quickly, they're different by design and creation. We mentioned this last year. Genesis 1:31, God said, it is very good. If you want to track the first chapter of Genesis, this is what it is in a nutshell, right? God said, it was so, it was good, it was very good. So what God made is good, and what God made is good the way God made it. Do not be cowed, do not be coward, do not allow the world to foist on you things you know in your gizzard are not true. We're different. We're different by design and by creation. Years ago, my youngest son, this is not good, but I'll tell you, it's all I had to go on. So, your word against mine. All right? Weston was probably 3 years old. We were eating with the pastor on a Sunday noon for lunch. It was a very nice restaurant. It wasn't a country club, but it was something kind of like that. We're all seated at the table. Weston is 3 years old. He's in a high chair, and a man walks in with beautifully long hair. Nice guy, dressed well, but long hair. Now, let me just stop and say, maybe I should have. I probably should have, but I never said, Weston, men don't have long hair. That is evil. Never. He was 3 years old. I don't know if I ever said that to him. But he learned that, right? He learned it from me, probably in ways I don't even recognize, and he learned it because it's in there. Doesn't even nature teach you. So the guy walked in, and he saw a nice guy, and he walked in, he saw Weston, and he kind of smiled at Weston, and Weston looked up at him, and Weston said, "You're not a girl." Now, have you ever seen a cartoon where, like, Chipmunk is chattering, and you see a man, and when you see it from the chipmunk's perspective, he's speaking English, and then you see it from the man's perspective, and he's looking down, the chipmunk's just chattering? That's the way it was. Weston was saying real words that were really profound, and the guy just thought he was chattering, 3 times Weston looked at, "You're not a," he was amused. It was kind of like, "Oh, this is a joke, right? You're not a girl." I want to say, "Stop," and to the guy just, "Hey, thank you, keep going," because I was afraid he was going to hear something. A couple years later, we were in Colorado at a backpacking shop. The guy walks in with a skirt. Now, he had a beard. He was a backpacker. He was really cool. So I'm sure I'm just a backwater Tennessean. There's another name for it, I'm sure. It's like a hiking kilt or something. But it was a skirt, all right? And my 3-year-old knew it. At this time, actually, Weston was about maybe 8. And he walked in. I thought, oh, no, Weston. Where's Weston? I got to stop him. Oh, no. So I see this guy. I'm thinking, skirt, that's bad. That's dumb. But Weston he didn't just think things. He expressed them. So he said, "Hey, Dad, come here, Weston." "But Dad, no, I know. But Weston, shut up. I see the guy with the shirt." So look, there are differences. We know this. They're created differences. We're different by design. That is, it's God's idea. We're different by creation. God did it. We're different by necessity. Again, to go back to actually what we talked about last year, if you happen to be here, verse 28, God gives the mandate to replenish the earth to how many people? 2. Do you realize every person in humankind came from 2 people? God gave this massive mandate to 2 people. Now, I'm not trying to be clever, I'm not trying to be crass, and this should be obvious, but it's not. There's no way this could have worked any other way. If God had made 2 Adams or 2 Eves, it ain't going to happen, right? Replenish the earth, multiply, subdue the earth. There's only one way that mandate could be followed, and that is if God made what God actually made. 2 people that are different so they can be one. So they may be one, but they're also different. And that's important to remember. Different by necessity. Different in function and in thinking. Let me ask you a question. If you're married, not everyone here is, so guys looking ahead. When someone calls your wife and you just hear the conversation from her perspective, do you know who she's talking to? If it's her mom, do you know that? How many of you know that? If she's talking to her mom, you know that? Isn't that amazing? Okay. If it's her dad, do you know that? How many of you know that? If it's a friend, I don't mean you hear anything coming from the receiver. I mean you just hear your wife's end of the conversation. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, why is that? Because you're different. Okay? So it's kind of like the guy that, is from Alabama, but now he's in Michigan. And he sounds like perfectly normal English until he calls back home, and then all of a sudden, wham! It just all comes back. He's speaking Alabamian again, or whatever. Or a guy's from Michigan, and he moves to Tennessee or Alabama, and it's the exact reverse. What I'm saying is that you can tell. You can tell if it's dad or mom or a lady friend of hers. How do you know that? You know that because your spouse doesn't think like you. You're different. This is so cliche, it's been so hackneyed, I don't even want to bring it up, but it's been panned for a reason, right? I get home at the end of the day, my wife says, "How was your day?" She has no idea how loaded that is. I just don't even have the juice to even begin to chronicle what's happened the last 8 hours. It's happened, I gave everything I have, I'm worn out, I don't want to talk about it again. I mean, honestly. I need to at some point, but not now, right? If I come home, well, it's something I would never do if I'm worn out. Hey, how was your day? Because you're going to find out, right? You're different. Now, it may be that, you're home, you're the talker, your wife isn't, whatever. But the bottom line is, you're different in any event. You're different. My daughter is at college. My son is at college. Okay, when my daughter talks to us pert near every day. And usually at length every day. So we don't have to ask, how are you doing? We know. I got a text a week ago today, Cena did, and the text merely said from my daughter, "I'm feeling crazy today." My son saw that and said, "Oh no, uh-oh." Well, there's a long conversation that followed. She's doing great. She's not crazy. She's a gift from God, and she's a brilliant girl, I was going to say, but I'm biased, but she is. So Wilson, on the other hand, my son, is different. A week ago, I sent Wilson a picture of 7 ski boots. This means nothing to you, and it doesn't need to. I sent him a picture of 7 ski boots. No text, just a picture. A picture's worth what? I sent him 7,000 words. Right? Ski boots. I got a 3-word response. I'm so stoked. I don't know what stoked means. Maybe it's a bad word. I don't know. But that was the conversation. That was it. I sent him a picture. He said, "Man, I'm so stoked. I'm ready to go. I'm excited." He was ready for winter. Okay. The difference there is Lauren is a girl. Wilson is not. Wilson is a man. So we need to recognize the difference. Quickly, second difference. This is just the first lesson. Recognize the difference not only of you and your wife in gender and the way all that entails, but in your upbringing. Ephesians 5, let me just read this quickly for you. Ephesians 5:31. This is actually quoting from Genesis, but Ephesians 5:31 says, "For this cause," that is for marriage, "shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh." Okay, so at marriage, a new authority structure is established. And it is instructive, it is intentional that the man is the one that leaves. You think it'd be the wife. It's not the wife that leaves her father and mother, it's you. It's you. Why? Because you're taking the initiative. You're the man. My dad and mom live, 75 yards from me, if that? So, am I rebelling against God's command? I hope not. No, I'm not. Because this is not geographical. This is mental, spiritual. It's manning up. It's taking the responsibility. So I've left my father and mother, and actually I suppose I could say my wife has as well, and we're one flesh, but we're a new family. So I want to ask how many of you, but a lot of you know our family. Our family would know you. Not everyone, but a lot of you. Even more I would know, but a good number of you know our entire family. If I talk about Mrs. Rice, or someone talks about Mrs. Rice, if my pastor says something about Mrs. Rice, who are we talking about? Well, that's fascinating, because if this were 5 years ago, you would have said Dr. Kathy Rice. Now, most of you thinking my mom. You know, there are 10-year-olds that when they hear Mrs. Rice, they're thinking Cena Rice. Now, what's the difference? Ain't none of them Rices. They are Rices, but we didn't start out that way. In other words, your home is a compilation of two families, and that is more profound than you know. Your families, as synonymous as you may feel them to be, are more different than you know. I'll give you an example. Some of you know my in-laws, the Berkeys. I love them dearly. I am blessed beyond anything I deserve, and that is true. And if you were just to look at the Berkeys and the Rices, you think, man, they're cookie cutter. Oh, no, man. There are some huge differences. No, not really. I mean, not really. Some of you, you'd be saying, Rice, you're so spoiled. You're talking about huge differences. You don't know huge differences, and you would be right. But that's kind of my point. Even small things can be bigger than you might think. Mrs. Rice, are we talking about Widener or Bingham or Berkey? Look, every family has a scent. If you walk into their house, you think, oh, I don't have time to give examples, but I could. Okay, good, bad, and different, right? They have a scent. They have a sound. The way they talk, you're the last one to see it because it's wallpaper to you, but your family has a sound. There's just things about you. It makes you you. So if you said, what do Rices eat? What do you grow up eating? It depends. Catherine was from Texas. Mary's from Colorado. Cena's from Illinois. We don't eat what I grew up eating. We eat what they eat in Illinois. You understand? What do the Rices eat? Illinois. Aren't you from Tennessee? 3 generations, we eat from Illinois. Right? Our soap, our soup, our scent, it's Illinois. I mean, it's a combination. I guess, I haven't contributed to the soup, but I mean, the other things, yes. It's a bringing together two families. So let me give you some silly things, but, and I'm spoiled, but these aren't autobiographical necessarily. But yeah, they are. Okay, so I've blown that. Dogs, right? I grew up knowing that dogs are part of the family. My granddad had Colorado mule deer, bison, an African lion on the ranch, no joke, dogs, scads of them, animals of every kind. They all stayed in the house. No, not really. The dogs did though. Dog, Great Dane dog. It's a dog. You keep them inside, right? So, no, it may be different for you. Maybe both of you this way. But my wife grew up in a home. Now, both of us have farmers, but her dad grew up on a farm, and farmers hate animals. That's what I've learned. They like to eat them. They like to do other things, but they don't. It's not a pet. You say, no, I had a pet. His name was Shep. No, Shep had a job. He wasn't to help you psychologically. He was to help you make money. That's what your dog did, man. All right? My dog, you'd say, useless. Little, white, fluffy, wimpy. I'm going to live longer and happier because that little fluffy dog. She's not making money. She's not herding cattle. She's not doing nothing but making me happy. I come home and at the end of the day, she likes me. Doesn't matter what I've done or what I've said. She thinks I'm great, and so I kind of like her too. So dogs, my dad who's here, and he's more right than I am. This is not right or wrong, but I'm just trying to. You got to be careful. There's so many people that know so many people. But my dad-in-law said, if I am quoting him correctly, that having a dog in the house is an abomination, utterly detestable. And I grew up sleeping with my dog, on cold winter nights. Dog curls up at the foot of your bed, whatever. So is that important? No, until it is. Because you think, hey, we're going to get married, we're going to buy a dog, and the dog's going to sleep at the foot of her bed. And she's thinking, no, she's going to make money or she's going to be out of here, but she's not going to, no. Dogs, the vehicle you drive. I didn't know how weird my family was, I told staff earlier this week, until I got married. And then I realized, not everyone does this, just everyone in this house does this. So I thought everyone that cared washed their vehicle before they took a 1,000-mile trip. Right? You don't want to be 1,000 miles in a dirty car. That's miserable. So you wash it, then you put bugs on it. And you're laughing because you think that's insane. Well, then you're right. Or at least, you might be married to someone who thinks differently. Packing. I could just go on forever. So many things. So look, we form our expectations and judgments of our spouse from watching our parents. If your mom always did X, Y, and Z, and that in your mind means she loves us and nurtures us, then you expect that your wife will nurture and love your children in the same ways. And that can cause profound misunderstandings and problems. If your dad, and by the way, the roles of dad and mom are static. They are given by God. But the way those are implemented have a variety of ways depending on a number of things. I think, and that deserves explanation, but for instance, your dad, okay? He's the provider, the protector, and the director of your home. That is your mandate from God. It's non-negotiable. But what did that look like in your house? Was your dad absent? Was he hyperactive? Did he help how much did he help your mom with domestic duties? See, that forms your expectation of this is what a dad is. Here's a guy, and he's very nurturing. He's a dad, he takes the lead. But he's also very gentle. He almost has a mother's way about him. Okay, that's going to be very different than a father who may be providing the same things but in different ways. So I need to get moving here. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to communicate well, you've got to begin by realizing you have different ways of speaking based on different expectations. Learn to recognize the differences between men and women and between her upbringing and yours. Number 2, quickly, learn to listen. And you probably were expecting this as well. You should have. Learn to listen. Speaking is only one half of a conversation. This is really interesting. People are so interesting. I am one too, I know. You talk to someone and you say nothing. Now, maybe that's never happened to you. It doesn't happen to me nearly enough. I'm convicted of how much I talk sometimes. I really am. But, and when they're done, they've done all the talking. You've just asked a couple deliberate questions. You're not just shooting the breeze. They're good questions. And they say, man, this has been a great conversation. You think this was a conversation? Like 2 of us? I thought this was a soliloquy, a monologue, one person doing it. A conversation. You ever heard someone say, man, he is just the most fascinating guy. What did he say? Well, he asked me, and then he asked me, and then he listened as what are we doing? People perceive others as great conversationalists when they shut their mouth and open their ears, when they listen, in short. Now, when I was thinking about doing this, I thought either this is going to degenerate into merely psychological study, which is not what is authoritative for this. If it's true, then it's because it reflects what God has established. Or you're going to have to take a couple in the Bible and show something by way of example, something that you could easily do. But Proverbs, surely, in your brainstorm, which is what happened with me, comes to the top of the pond. You just think like bubbles rising to the surface. Proverbs is full, of instructions about what we say, mouth, tongue, lips. You just think about how much God has said about what you say, James, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. It is overwhelming. There's more print about speech than pert near anything else. There's a lot. It is very important. And of those verses, of that instruction in the Bible, it's amazing how much of what the Bible says about speech is really about listening. Let me give you a couple. And go ahead and look, write them down if you want to, but I want you to see these. Look at Proverbs chapter 10. And we're going to turn just a bit here for the next few minutes, so just stick with me if you would. Proverbs chapter 10, and look at verse 19. Proverbs 10:19. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that restraineth his lips is wise. When there are a lot of words, there's a healthy helping of sin. I mean, that's striking. Look at Proverbs 29. Proverbs 29, then we're going to go back and split the difference in chapter 12 again in just a moment. Proverbs 29, and keep your finger in where we just were, because we're going to be back there in just a moment. Proverbs 29, and look at verse 11. Proverbs 29:11. A fool uttereth all his mind, and it doesn't take long, but a wise man keepeth it till afterwards. Look at Proverbs 12. These are perhaps my favorite, and I should have structured these where we weren't going back and forth. Forgive me. Proverbs 12 and verse 16. Proverbs 12:16. And I'm going to ask you a question, so put your thinking cap on, something you should always do when you're looking at the Bible. Proverbs 12:16. A fool's wrath is presently, that is quickly, right now known, but a prudent man covereth shame. So the Bible says a fool's wrath is quickly known. How is it quickly known? By what he says. You know everything a fool knows in about 3.5 minutes, because he said everything he knows in the same time. From there, it's just repetition. A fool utters all his mind. A wise man couldn't utter all his mind. He couldn't do it in 5 minutes. He's not going to try. Because a fool, dumb smartphone. Look, how does a fool out himself? By what he says. A wise man outs himself by what he doesn't say, and more specifically, it's not just the absence of speech, it's the presence of listening. Listening is at least as active a pursuit as speaking, and I would say actually more active. Because listening is not hearing. You listen with your brain. The ear is just the way it comes in, just the same thing guys. You see with your brain, you hear with your brain, you taste with your brain. This brings it in, it's your brain, right? So listening is a much more active pursuit than talking. It's much more active than talking. Talking is automatic, speech is not, or listening is not. Proverbs 12:26. Proverbs 12, and not verse 26, verse 23. A prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaimeth foolishness. So all that to say, second lesson we had to learn here is learn to listen. And when I say learn to listen, I don't just mean stop talking. That is a first step. Okay? That's easy though. Just stop talking. The second though is learn to listen. So 3 things in particular. Number 1, just wait to talk. Don't you hate to wait? Don't you hate to wait to do things? Don't you have plans? Don't you have some ambition? Don't you have some moxie? Don't you want to do it now? Do you hate to wait to talk, to act? Yes. I think it's even harder to wait to talk, because some things we know we can't do till we have $5,000. Talking you can do right now. That's cheap. Talk is cheap. You don't have to wait a minute unless you wish. So give room for an ongoing conversation. Fools don't know anything. A scorner doesn't want to know anything, and a wise person listens. By the way, in the Proverbs, the Bible often says, "My son," and then it talks about listening. A man who did not learn to listen as a son is scarcely able to do it as a husband. And so if you've got a late start, then just ask God to help you, because it's something you cannot do on your own. It's not natural. It's supernatural, which means it has to involve God. So wait to talk. Secondly, on listening, listen to learn. So learn to listen but listen to learn. In other words, listen in order to learn. Okay, so you and your wife are having a discussion. It's not a debate. It's not a fight. It's a mild debate. You have two different opinions. Which, if she's always agreeing with you, then why do you need her? You need some perspective in your life, and she's going to give that to you, right? She knows that dogs should be outside. She thinks everything is so personal. I can't say nothing. I'll have to wait till I'm in Missouri next month. I'm being silly, but it demonstrates that we all need this. Okay, so you're having a discussion, right? You're having a debate. You state the truth, and then you hear her perspective on your truth. Right? And you say, well, I'm listening. I'm listening with a paper and a pen, point by point. And what are you going to do with what you're listening to? You're forming a really good response, right? Because you're the logical one, and you're going to reason your way into this. You're not going to just feel your way into some rash decision. You're the man. You're going to listen so you can let her have it, right? No. There's a difference between listening in order to give a response and listening to understand. Stephen Covey, 30 years ago, seek first to understand, then to be understood. That's probably not bad advice because it's actually, it's proverbial. So listen to learn. Proverbs 17. Would you turn there? I know we're turning a lot, but I want you to see this. This is not just textual, it's multi-textual. It's all over the Bible. A blind man could see it. Proverbs 17, 27 and 28. He that hath knowledge spareth his words. Now, is that not counterintuitive, counter to the way you think? If you know something other people don't know, what is your first instinct? Tell them. You got to tell them. Can I just tell you something? Is a rare man that does not feel compelled to tell everything he knows. It's my working assumption. If I say something, it's no longer a secret. It's not that I think they're a bad person, they're going to tell them. They don't have to. A little bird can be on the wing, and I don't even know how this happens scientifically, but it does. So the Bible says, he that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. I've quoted this a million times. Supposedly, Abraham Lincoln said, it is better to be silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt, right? So, years ago, I was looking for the Rice Ranch in West Texas, out in the middle of nowhere, where my granddad was born. And long story short, I just went house to house. It was like Sherlock Holmes. And so I'm driving down this dirt road, 5 miles on a dirt road from the main highway, which is itself in the middle of nowhere. I'm looking for the Williams Ranch because in 1899, the Williams family took a car from Kentucky, went out there, bought everything up, including what was the Rice Ranch, which may have been 10 acres. I don't know. I really don't know. There are records, but I haven't taken the time. But anyway, so I'm driving down this dirt road. I'm looking for Williams Ranch, and here comes a truck with two cowboys. They've got two saddle horses, a saddled horse in the pickup truck, not a horse trailer, a pickup truck. He's standing up in the bed of the pickup truck, and they've got these big wood panels. So, I mean, this is the real deal. And so here comes this horse and two cowboys. Here comes the Rices in the dually, and I'm heading for this dead end like 3 miles ahead, looking for Rice Ranch. I want to talk to Mr. Williams, which I ended up doing, and he showed me where to look. So I kind of wave him down, roll the windows down. Dust comes pouring in both of our trucks. And I gave him my spiel. I've been giving this spiel to people for 2 days looking for stuff. I said, hey, my name's Will Rice. 100 years ago, 90 years ago, my family lived here. I'm looking for the Rice Ranch. I said, I'm looking for the Williams Ranch. Do you know where that is? I'm not exaggerating. I'm not just, this is what happened. He didn't say one word. I said, do you know where the Williams Ranch is? He just went, kind of like, you ain't from around here, are you, boy? I said, thank you, sir. I was gone. All right. I don't know how much he knew, but he didn't say anything to dissuade me, right? He gave you an answer without even saying a word. Listen to learn. I remember the smartest guy in second grade. He's actually a pastor now and a really good guy. He's one of those guys that made me feel nervous because he was smart, but he was also really quiet. And you got to watch out for quiet people. You always wonder what they know and what they're thinking, what they're observing, and they will say at the worst time to the wrong person. So listen to learn. Third thing under learning to listen with more than your ears. This is an attitude. This is a mindset. This is a practice. When I was growing up, my mom would often say, Will, look into my eyes. Are you listening to me? Why did my mom repeatedly ask that question? Did you know that your pastor knows when you're listening? Now, you're always looking at him, but that doesn't mean anything. You ever have that glazed over look? It is a look. It's not a feel. It's a look. I know right now what you're... No, I know what you're thinking, but I know if you're awake or not, right? And so my mom is even more keen on that. She'd say, Will, you listening to me? And I said, yes. What did I say? You were talking to me, and you asked me what you just said. Right? Look, my wife will often say, she'll say this thing, are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? Look into my eyes. When I used to work horses, I had a little paint mirror named Note, music's little note. And I developed a habit that year, I was 16, that I do now. I don't even think about it, I just do it. It's just done. Whenever I'm neck reining a horse, I'm giving a little leg pressure. You can't see it, but the horse can feel it. So I'm giving a little leg pressure. And the reason I do that is I learned the way you teach is you just do it. You just do the same thing every time. You're just consistent. And good or bad, that will be learned. So this was my first time, and I don't have enough hours or reps now that I think I'm done too good with Encore, but with Note, it was hours every day. So if I went left, I would leg first and then rein. And then if I'm going right, I would leg first and then rein. So she would feel it, and then people would see it, and she'd turn. Well, for a week, she was just ignoring me. Leg, nothing, leg, nothing. It was like she didn't hear a thing I was saying without words. Then one day, I noticed she was really acting kind of peculiar. She would swish her tail, which is sometimes flies and sometimes frustration, and there were no flies. She just kept it, so I thought, she's ticked off about something. She'd swish her tail, and then she'd like, wham, hit that back right into the dirt. We'd be walking. We were walking on the trail, and swish, whack. I thought, and I realized every time I was legging, she would swish, whack. And she went from total indifference to irritation to understanding. Are you with me? Indifference, irritation, understanding. I was communicating with more than words, and she was understanding the same way. So listening means a frame of mind. I am very poor at this. Again, here, any dime store psychologist will probably tell you this. But if you're listening, then and I think this is true. I hate to say anything that I've heard, and I can't even, everyone says it. But basically, repeat what you hear. So what I hear you saying is, when people are so structured, I think, what book have you just read? Come on. The sandwich. You're going to whack somebody, so you butter them up, and you tell them something nice, and then you let them have it, and then you say something nice. So sometimes, at camp, I can see it coming. Brother Will, we just love you, and we love this camp. Yeah. Oh, we love. I'm just, hey, I don't feel insecure. I like you too. Just tell me what we need to change, and I'll listen, okay? So you can say nice things to me. What I'm saying is, sometimes you think, this guy's been reading too much. He just needs to get on with it. So this is one of those things, but repeat what you've heard. So what you're saying is, and either you'll realize that you are being unfair, and you're not repeating what your wife has said. You are caricaturing what she said. You know what a caricature is? It's a cartoon with an exaggeration of some feature. So if a guy has slightly large ears, it's 2 ears with legs, right? That's a caricature. Or if it's Donald Trump, it's hair with a little face, right? It's a caricature. And we do that. So what you're saying is you want me to lose my job, move to Minnesota, and kick the dog out of the house. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I said? No, I didn't say that. I just said, you see what I'm saying? So she'll know, you'll know, and you'll know how fair you're being. We got to hurry. Good night. Okay, quickly. And by the way, a wise man hears every word his wife isn't saying. Right? So that's more than ears. So learn to listen. Number 3, and we're done. Learn to speak thoughtfully. There's a difference between speaking thoughtfully and thinking speakfully. Have you ever thought speakfully? You say something, you think, oh, did I say that? It's like you heard someone else say it. Did I say that? I thought I was just thinking it. No, you said it. We're not talking about saying everything you think. We're talking about thinking before you say it. We're talking about speaking thoughtfully. I do not mean here nice. Considerate doesn't mean nice. Think about the word thoughtful. What does thoughtful mean? Full of what? Thought. Okay, considerate means considerate. Consider it. Consider. Think. So, savvy? You gotta think before you talk. So, learn to speak thoughtfully. 3 things, and we're done. Speak to the right person. Speak to the right person. In the context of this session, who would that be? Your wife. Now, who are some other people that we can talk to before we talk to our wife? Your dad. This depends on age. Your mom. Your kids. Your coworkers. That's not the way to. I don't need my dad to sympathize with me. And by the way, that does not happen. Again, I'm blessed, but that can be a tendency. Now, speaking to my kids, I got to be careful about that. Well, your mom said, there's a little bit of an edge on it. Okay, that's not right. That's not right. We drive a lot. We're on the road a lot. If you want your kids to totally miss everything you're saying, just talk like this. Yeah, he said, she said, they went. It could be breaking news, but they're not going to hear it. If I want every kid in the back seat to listen intently, say no. Don't breathe this to his soul. And then all 3, like ostriches, over the back seat, looking down, right? So, speak to the right person. Speaking thoughtfully means number 1, the right person. I used to think good communication is tell everyone everything all the time. Now, to say it like this, that's disaster. And it's hard. If you're a pastor, I can only imagine, right? There are things you've got to communicate, but good communication is the right person in the right way at the right time. It's not telling everyone everything all the time. It's better to not know something than to know something that isn't so. One is just neutral. One is actively bad. You know something that ain't so. So learn to speak to the right person. Not work, not kids, not your in-laws, not your parents. Proverbs 25:9 says, it's funny, these are all verses well known, they ought to be. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another. The New Testament speaks of this as well, other verses than Proverbs, but I need to cut to the chase. So Proverbs 25:9, speak to the right person. Number 2, speak at the right time. Speak at the right time. Timing, the other I get, this is my lesson for last fall. Timing is everything. A good thing at the wrong time is not a good thing. Proverbs 15:23. A man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good it is. It's interesting. Timing is everything. So if I need to discuss something with my wife, and she's on the phone, and something's burning on the stove, and we're all late, and the kids are fighting, that's not the right time. It's the wrong time. You wonder why you don't get an answer? It's because it's the wrong time. Now, real quick, I've noticed, again, just in the context of life, different people are different. Some people, wham, the moment something comes to their mind, that's the priority. Doesn't matter what you're doing, where you are, what's going on. They're going to get it off their list, and it's on your list. Right? And this is fair. I do the same thing. But wham, something comes to mind, it's got to be done now. And the whole world stops to accommodate that person. Other people on the other side, and this is the way I've got to work on this. I can talk for a long time, as you can see, but I've got to be primed. It's got to warm up. So my problem is there's never a good time. Yeah, I'm going to talk to them when the planets are aligned, it's warm but not hot, cool but not cold, I'm hungry but not, stuffed. So there's a balance there. But here's what I would say. Communication demands time. It demands the right time, but it just demands time. Don't try to solve big issues with little time. Look, if you've got an issue you're going to talk about, don't allow some problem that's an example of it to dictate when you're going to talk about it. Bad timing. A lot of times, and my wife is very good at this, Cena will say, hey, when would be a good time that we could talk about? She wants to talk about things. And she's learned, when would be a good time? Last week, okay, I've got to go, but I will be done in 5 minutes, all right? I need mornings where I can think. Anything I do with anything is in the first 3 hours. It's all coasting from there. It's all action from there. It's just the way I'm made, and I'm not even joking. So it was a morning a couple weeks ago. There was something that needed to be discussed. I should have taken initiative on it. And in my case, I wanted to read and I wanted to think. And I realized we were getting into a conversation. And I could tell that I was being resistant and just saying, hey, could we do this some other time? I was getting irritated. And then Cena figured, oh, hey, wrong time. Can we talk about this sometime? I said, yeah, hey, thank you, that'd be great. She was savvy to that. Okay, on the other end, sometimes it's supper time and I want to get something off my list, and that's just a poor time. So don't allow the train wreck to dictate when you're going to discuss this, because now you've got emotions and lack of preparation and logic. You decide. Now, some things can't be put off, and I understand that. I'm not, again, I hope you hear what I'm saying, not what I'm not saying, but look, take a time to walk, take a time to drive, go to Walmart. Yes takes time. If you spend all day saying yes to everyone, you have no yes left when you get back home.
That's right.
So that means you're going to have to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'd love to do that, Bob. Can't do that right now. You don't even know that you're going to need an hour when you get home, but when you get home, you'll be glad you had it. Does that make sense to you? Okay, yes takes time. No does not. No doesn't take any time. Not many people say no, and that's why not many people have time. Okay, one more thing, we're done, all right? Communicate in the right way. This is, someone will have the exact number, I don't mean literally, it's 90% of communication. It's not what you say. Is there a difference between text and a phone call and FaceTime? I'd love to elaborate on that, but yeah, there is, for sure. And it's all body language, etc. Okay, let me just give you one example and we're done. Here's a statement a man might say to his wife. You look good today. What does that mean? You look good today. I've communicated. I said, you look good today. Okay. So, you look good today. What does that mean?
What about the other day?
The exact, I'm getting that one. Yeah, that means the exact, that's sarcasm. That means the exact opposite of what I've just said. Word for word means exactly the opposite. You look good today. Okay, how about this? You look good today. Means you feel rotten. It's okay. You look good today. You look good today. Okay, you can do this with every word. I don't need to run it into the ground, but you understand what I'm saying? It's not just who I'm talking to. It needs to be the right person, not someone else, your wife, right? We could get into, if it's not honest, it's not helpful. I almost did you get into Jacob's family, so much manipulation, so much heartache from wife to husband to dad-in-law. It's crazy. Honest and true, but in the right way. And so what are we saying? We're saying good communication is crucial to a good marriage, and that's exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. exactly what we want, exactly what we want, exactly what we want.